"You fight dirty and I love that," said the saloon owner after the cowboy stopped the land thief. The deed was rolled tight and tucked inside my left boot when I rode into Harlan, which tells you something about the kind of town it was. Not that I'd stolen it. I hadn't. But a man carries a piece of paper like that in his boot when he knows someone in town might want to take it from him before he can do what he came to do. And I'd been in enough towns to know the signs. Harlan had the signs. You ride in, and you feel it before you see it. The way the horses at the rail stand with their heads too low. The way a man sweeping a boardwalk stops sweeping when he hears hooves and doesn't start again until you've passed. A town that's scared has a particular quiet to it, like a room where an argument just ended. The words are gone, but the temperature's still wrong. I pulled up in front of the livery, and the boy who came out to take my horse was maybe 15, and he had a bruise along his jaw that was 3 days old, yellowing at the edges. He didn't look at my face, took the reins and said 2 bits a night, and I said fine, and he led the horse in without another word. I stood in the street. The saloon was the biggest building on the north side, which, in most western towns, means it's the only building worth looking at. This one had a proper facade, painted red once and gone to a dark rust now, with Holtz lettered across the top in white that was peeling but still legible. The doors were open, even though it wasn't yet noon. I could hear someone moving around inside, the scrape of a chair, the clink of glass. My name is Cal Briggs, and I'm not going to tell you I'm a good man in the way preachers use that word. I've done things I wouldn't explain to a woman I respected, but I had been hired to come to Harlan with a deed, deliver it to a woman named Della Holt, and make sure a man named Harlan Cruz didn't take what wasn't his. The man who hired me was a lawyer in Santa Fe who'd run out of legal options and decided he needed a different kind. I'd been that kind before. What I knew going in. Della Holt owned the saloon, 40 acres of land, including the creek that fed most of the valley, and a water right that was older than the county itself. Harlan Cruz had been buying up land around hers for 2 years, pressuring sellers with a combination of low offers and the kind of encouragement that left bruises on livery boys. He'd gotten every parcel in the valley except hers. Without hers, his plan, whatever it was, a railroad spur, a cattle monopoly, the lawyer hadn't been entirely clear, didn't work. He needed her creek. She'd refused to sell. That was 3 months ago. Since then, 2 of her workers had quit. One had been beaten badly enough to leave the territory. Her liquor supplier had canceled her contract without explanation, and someone had put a notice in the county paper forged, the lawyer said, claiming she was behind on her property taxes. The county assessor, who was in Cruz's pocket, had not corrected it. The deed I carried was the original water right, pulled from the county recorder's office in Santa Fe by the lawyer, certified and witnessed. Cruz had filed a competing claim 2 months ago. The lawyer believed that if I could put this document in front of the circuit judge, who was due in Harlan in 8 days before Cruz's man could suppress it, Della Holt kept her water and her land, and Cruz's whole play collapsed. 8 days, a deed in my boot, and a name I'd never met. I went into Holtz. She was behind the bar. I'd been told she was a woman who ran a saloon. In my experience, that covers a wide range of women, from the respectable widow, keeping a family business alive, to a hard-mouthed woman who's seen every bad thing twice and stopped feeling it. Della Holt was neither of those. She was, I don't know how to say this without it sounding like I'm making something out of nothing, so I'll just say it plain. She was about 40, dark-haired with some gray at the temples, medium height, and she had the face of a woman who has thought hard about things and has opinions about most of them. Not pretty in the soft way. Sharp. The kind of face that got more interesting the longer you looked at it. She was writing something in a ledger when I came in, and she glanced up the way you glance up when you're expecting someone ordinary, and got that instead. "We're not open," she said. "I'm not thirsty," I said. "Then what are you?" Not a question. Just a blunt request for information. I liked that. "My name is Cal Briggs. I was sent by an attorney in Santa Fe named Ellison Garr. He asked me to deliver something to you and to stay until a matter is settled." She put her pen down, looked at me with the particular attention of someone who is deciding whether they're being helped or played. "Garr sent you." "Yes, ma'am." "What kind of man does Garr send?" I'd been asked variations of that question a dozen times over the years. Usually it was a nervous man asking it, trying to figure out if I was more dangerous than whatever he'd hired me to deal with. She wasn't nervous. She was just gathering information. The kind who knows how to read a legal document and doesn't mind standing between it and a man who wants it to disappear, I said. She studied me another moment. Then she said, "Get behind the bar and pour yourself coffee if you want it. I don't drink before noon, and I don't talk business until I've finished my accounts." I got behind the bar. The coffee was on the stove at the back, strong and black in a battered blue pot. I poured a cup. I sat down at the far end of the bar on a stool she had there, and I waited. She went back to her ledger. She wrote in it for probably 20 minutes. I drank my coffee. Outside, through the open doors, I could hear the town going about its morning, a wagon passing, someone calling across the street, the bell above the dry goods store when someone went in. Ordinary sounds. Worried town sounds. When she closed the ledger, she said, "Let me see what Gar sent." I reached into my boot and put the deed on the bar. She unrolled it. She read it. She read it again. When she looked up, there was something in her face that I could not read. Exactly, relief was part of it. But careful relief, like a person who has been disappointed before, and is not willing to spend the good feeling until they're sure. "He got the original," she said. "Yes. Cruz filed a competing claim." "I know. The circuit judge gets here in 8 days. Gar believes if this document is in front of him before Cruz can have it suppressed or discredited, you win the water right, and Cruz loses the leverage he needs." She rolled the deed back up slowly, with the kind of care you use on something you've almost lost. "What I need to know," she said, "is what standing between it and Cruz means when you say it. It means I'm going to make sure this document gets to that judge, whatever that requires. Men have been hurt," she said. "My men. I know. Cruz has 4 men working for him, not cowhands, the kind you hire for the other thing. I know that too. You're one man. I've noticed." She looked at me with a very level expression that contained, I thought, the beginning of something not quite humor, not quite respect, something that might become either, or both. "Where'd Gar find you?" she said. "He didn't find me. We worked together before. He knows what I can do." "What can you do?" "Right now? I can make sure Harlan Cruz doesn't get his hands on that deed for 8 days, and that when the judge arrives he has what he needs to see. After that I'll be gone, and it's your land free and clear." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You hungry?" "Yes. Sit down at a table. I'll get you eggs. I'll tell you something about those first 3 days, because they mattered." I stayed at Holt's. There were 3 rooms upstairs she rented to travelers, and she gave me one without discussion. Told me what it cost, and that was that. I paid her in advance. She was the kind of woman who didn't want to owe, and didn't want to be owed, and there was a working respect in that, the kind where both people know the terms. I spent those first days learning Harlan the way you learn a town before trouble walking it, watching it, sitting in places where people talked, and letting them get used to me being there. Cruz had an office above the land and title company on the south end of the street. I walked past it twice a day. His 4 men were easy enough to identify. One of them, the biggest, I'd seen the type before. A man who had worked himself into the belief that size was the same thing as being unkillable. It isn't. The other 3 were harder and more careful, which meant they were more dangerous. I cataloged them and kept moving. In the evenings I came back to the saloon. She opened at 4. By 7 it was half full. Mostly ranch hands from the surrounding spreads. A few merchants, a couple of the older men who came because they had nowhere else to be. The saloon was well run. The drinks were honest and the prices were fair, and she moved behind that bar like it was the one place in the world where everything made sense to her. I sat at a corner table and drank slowly and watched. On the second night she came to my table after the crowd thinned. She set 2 glasses down and poured from a bottle she'd been keeping under the bar. "Good whiskey," I said, after the first taste. "My father's. He brought 3 cases from Kentucky before he died, and I've been rationing it for 10 years. She looked at the glass. "Figured tonight called for it." "Why tonight?" "Cruz was in the land office for 2 hours this afternoon. He had his lawyer and 2 other men I didn't recognize. Whatever they're doing, they're moving faster than I'd like. I'd seen them. I'd made note of the two strangers. One of them had the bearing of a county official, the way he held himself when he walked, slightly too straight. The way of a man who has spent time making sure people knew he had authority. The county assessor was one of them, I said. She looked at me. You know that. I recognized the way he carried himself. Men with small pieces of official power have a particular walk. You've been watching them. All day. She was quiet for a moment, turning the glass on the table. What are they planning? She said. My guess, and it's only a guess, is they're looking at the competing water claim from a different angle. The deed Gar sent is certified and witnessed, but if they can argue the recording was improper in some way, create enough confusion in the chain of title, they might be able to delay the judge's decision. Give themselves more time. More time for what? To find another way to pressure you. She looked at the glass. I waited. I've had this saloon for 11 years, she said. My husband built the frame and got sick and died before the walls were up, and I finished it myself. Took me 3 years to get it the way I wanted. I have 7 men working for me, 4 in the saloon, 3 on the land, and right now 2 of those are afraid to come to work, and 1 is gone. I'm pouring my own drinks, cooking my own food, and keeping my own books. She said all of this without self-pity. It was just the account of what was. I know, I said. I'm not telling you that, so you'll feel sorry for me. I know that too. She looked at me then, for a moment, straight on. What are you going to do about it? She said. I'm going to make it so Cruz can't finish what he started. I'm going to make it so the men he has watching this place stop watching it. And I'm going to make sure that deed gets to the judge in 8 days whole and witnessed. How? By being worse than he expected. She looked at me a moment longer. Then she picked up the whiskey bottle and poured us each another inch. My father used to say, she said, that the only way to deal with a man who fights dirty is to fight dirtier. He was right. I thought so too. She set the bottle down. But it took me a long time to find a man who'd say so without apologizing for it. Day 4. I'd been watching the bigger of Cruz's men, the one I'd read as believing in his own size, and I'd noticed he had a habit. Every morning around 9, he walked from the hotel where Cruz's men were housed, down to the far end of the street, and picked up a leather satchel from a man who ran a small print shop at the end of the block. The satchel went back to Cruz's office. I didn't know what was in it, and I didn't try to find out by following it. Instead, I watched the print shop. The man who ran it was named Aldous. Small, nervous, ink-stained. By the 3rd morning I had decided he was not a willing participant in whatever Cruz was doing. The way he handed over the satchel each time had the look of a man surrendering something he didn't want to give. I went in on day 4, late morning, after Cruz's man had come and gone. Aldous looked up and saw me, and went very still in the way people go, still when they're working out, whether this is better or worse than what they already had. I'm not here to hurt you, I said. I want to know what's in the satchel. He shook his head. Fast. Like a tick. Aldous, I said. Whatever they told you they'd do if you talked, I can promise you they'd rather do it quietly. They've been quiet so far because noise is bad for business. It's going to get noisy soon regardless. When it does, it'll be better to be on the right side of it. He looked at his hands, then at the floor, then finally at me. Letters, he said. Legal-looking letters. I print them to look like they come from the county recorder's office in Amarillo. Their correspondence about the water claim, they say the original filing had deficiencies, that the paper can't be used. I felt something settle in my chest, cold and clear. There it was. How many have you printed? 6, maybe 7. Does a real letter from the Amarillo office look like these? I've never seen one. They gave me a sample. Told me to copy the letterhead. Are there more to print? He hesitated. 1 more. For the judge. They want it ready before he arrives. I thought for a moment. Will you print me the one for the judge? I said. He stared at me. Exactly the same as what you'd print for them. I want to hold that letter in my hand so I can show the judge what was done. Can you do that? If Cruz finds out, Cruz is going to have enough trouble in the next 4 days that he won't have time to think about you. He looked at me for a long moment. The ink on his hands was the color of old bruises. I'll have it by tomorrow morning, he said. I went back to the saloon. Della was behind the bar. She looked at my face when I came in, and read it with the accuracy of a woman who has spent years watching men walk through doors. "Sit," she said. She poured me coffee. She waited. I told her about the forged letters. She listened without interrupting. When I was done, she set her palms flat on the bar and was quiet for a moment. I watched the set of her jaw tight, the muscle just below her cheekbone working once and then going still. "So even with the deed," she said. "Even with the deed, if those letters reach the judge first, and he takes them as legitimate, he may rule to delay the water rights decision until the Amarillo question is sorted out. That buys Cruz 6 months, maybe a year, long enough to break you another way. And the letter from Aldous. If I can show the judge the forged letter alongside the real correspondence, or better, show him there is no real correspondence, because I can wire Amarillo today and get a statement by the time the circuit comes through the forgery proves fraud. The judge doesn't just rule in your favor. He removes the competing claim entirely, and there's a criminal matter behind it." She was quiet. Then, "Go to the telegraph office." I was going to. "I know," she said. "I'm telling you to go now." I went. This is the part I need to tell carefully, because it's the part that mattered most. Day 5. I sent the wire to the Amarillo recorder's office before noon. I expected to wait 2 days for a reply, because that was the usual pace of official correspondence, moving through a small-town telegraph office in 1883, and that was time I didn't quite have. The reply came back in 4 hours, which told me the recorder's man in Amarillo had been waiting for someone to ask. No correspondence had been sent from their office regarding any water claim in Harlan County. None. And they were prepared to put that in writing and have it delivered to the circuit judge. I had the telegraph operator make me a copy of the reply, signed and stamped. I folded it and put it with the deed. I went back to the saloon. It was late afternoon by then, the place not yet open, and Della was in the back room going over invoices. I came through the back door, which she'd given me a key to on day 2, and I sat down across from her at the table she used as a desk. I laid out the wire receipt, the deed, and described the letter Aldous would have ready in the morning. She read the wire receipt. She read it again. "That's enough," she said. "It should be. When the judge arrives, I'll have everything organized and ready. Gar's gonna want to present it himself. He's the attorney of record. But I'll have it all in hand when I hand it to him." She sat back, looked at me. "What happens between now and the judge getting here?" she said. "Cruz is going to notice things going quiet around him. When his man goes to pick up that last letter tomorrow, and Aldous doesn't have one, or has one that isn't what he expected, something's going to shift." "Shift how?" "He'll push. That's what men like that do when they feel a plan failing. They push. At me. Or at the deed. Or at me." I said it flatly. "Probably all 3 at once." She looked at me for a long moment. "Are you afraid?" she said. It was a direct question, and she asked it plainly, the way she asked everything, without any softness to it, just wanting to know. "No," I said. "Cautious. There's a difference." She nodded slowly. "My husband was cautious," she said. "He thought about everything carefully. Measured twice." She looked at the desk. "He died anyway. Fever. Didn't have anything to do with caution or the lack of it. I didn't say anything to that. I've been angry about that for 11 years, she said. The unfairness of it. A careful man who thought things through, and it didn't protect him. No, I said. It doesn't always, but you're still cautious. I'm still alive. She looked at me then, with something I couldn't name exactly. Something that had the quality of recognition in it, like she was seeing something she'd been looking for, without knowing she was looking. You better be careful tomorrow, she said. Yes, ma'am. She went back to her invoices. I went upstairs. Day 6 was when Cruz moved. I'd gotten Aldis's letter that morning, folded it in with the deed and the wire receipt, and I was coming back up the main street when I saw 2 of Cruz's men come out of the hotel and head for the saloon with the particular walk of men who are going to cause trouble and have been told to. I changed my direction without hurrying. I was through the front doors of Holt's about 30 seconds before they were. Della was behind the bar. It was mid-morning. Only two old men at a corner table with coffee. She saw my face and her hand moved below the bar. She had a shotgun mounted under there. I'd noticed it on day one, but she didn't bring it up. The two men came in. The larger one, the one I'd been watching for days, came to the bar. The other one positioned himself near the door. Standard enough. "Ma'am," the big one said, with the particular politeness of a threat that hasn't quite been stated yet. "Mr. Cruz would like a word." "Mr. Cruz knows where my door is," Della said. Her voice was steady as a table. "He'd prefer you come to him." "I'm sure he would." I was standing off to the left, a little behind the big man. He half turned to look at me. "This doesn't concern you, friend." "I'm not your friend," I said. "And yes, it does." He looked at me fully now. The assessment men like that make: size, threat level, how much trouble, whether it was worth it. He was bigger than me by 4 inches and 40 pounds, and he'd spent years using that math to make calculations come out in his favor. "Briggs," he said. He knew my name, which meant Cruz had been doing his own watching. "That's right. Walk away." "No." He hit me. Not a swing, a shove, both hands, hard, meant to put me into the bar behind me and off my feet. I'd seen it coming since he said my name. I stepped left, let him go mostly past, and by the time he'd recovered his footing, I had a grip on his right wrist, and his arm torqued up behind him at an angle that made further movement inadvisable. He made a sound I won't describe. The man at the door started forward. Della brought the shotgun up over the bar. "Don't," she said. Just that word. He stopped. The big man was breathing hard through his nose. I kept the pressure on. "Here is what you're going to do," I said, not loud, close to his ear. "You're going to walk out of here. You're going to tell Cruz that whatever he thinks he has on the water claim is going to fall apart when the judge gets here. Because the letters he's been sending don't exist. I have a wire from Amarillo, confirming it, and the original deed is whole and certified, and witnessed by 2 men whose names are on the document. Tell him that." I let go of the wrist. "Go." He went. The one at the door followed. The door swung shut behind them. The 2 old men at the corner table were very still. Della lowered the shotgun. She looked at me for a long moment. "You knew they were coming," she said. "I guessed. You positioned yourself in time." "Yes." She looked at me. There was something in that look, not soft, not grateful in the weak way. Something harder and more genuine than that. The look of a woman who has been measuring a man for days and just finished. "You didn't draw on him," she said. "Didn't need to. Most men would have. Most men have something to prove." I went behind the bar and poured myself a cup of coffee. "I've got past that." She watched me do it. Then she came around the bar and stood close to me, not touching, but close, the way you stand when you've made a decision about someone, and said, in a voice that was quiet but completely certain, "You fight dirty, and I love that." I looked at her. She wasn't smiling exactly, but there was something in her face that had been absent the first day I walked, in an opening. A warmth that lived underneath the hardness, the way a fire lives underneath banked ash. Still controlled, still her, but turned toward me. "Your father's phrase," I said, "seemed like the right time for it." I drank my coffee. She stood next to me. Outside, nothing moved for a while. Cruz came himself that afternoon. I'll say this for the man. He was not a coward. He came alone, without his men, dressed better than anyone in Harlan had a right to be, and he walked into Holt's and stood in the middle of the room like a man who believed the ground belonged to him wherever he stood on it. Della and I were at the bar. I stayed where I was. Cruz looked at her, then at me. He had the face of a man who has spent years getting what he wanted and was now confronting the unfamiliar texture of not getting it, and handling that badly. "I have a fair offer for you," he said to Della. "You had a fair offer 6 months ago," she said. "Before the beatings and the forged correspondence and the notice in the paper about my taxes." He didn't flinch at forged correspondence, which told me he had some nerve. "Past misunderstandings," he said. "There's no misunderstanding," she said. "You want my water. You can't have it. The circuit judge will confirm that in 3 days." He looked at me. "Whatever Gar is paying you isn't the point?" I said. It's always the point. Not this time. He studied me. Men like Cruz have a talent for reading what people want and finding the lever. He was trying to find mine. I let him look. There was nothing there for him. You'll leave town when this is done, he said. Yes. She'll be alone again. She's been alone, I said. Look at what she built. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite anger, more like he had found the edge of a room he hadn't known was there, and didn't like looking into it. He looked at Della. Last offer, he said. $12,000. That's twice market. No, she said. He was quiet for a moment. You'll regret this. I've regretted things, she said. Not this. He left. 3 days. Those 3 days had a different quality than the first part of my time in Harlan. The town was still afraid you don't change that in a week, but Cruz's men were quieter, more watchful, which meant they were waiting on orders that weren't coming clearly. A man whose plan is falling apart gives orders that contradict themselves and his people feel it. I was watchful. I carried the deed and the wire receipt on my person every hour. I slept in my boots the first night after Cruz's visit, which is an uncomfortable thing to do and I don't recommend it. But I'd learned years ago that there are nights when that's the price of having the thing still in your possession in the morning. Della knew I was watching. She didn't say anything about it. She just made sure I had coffee when I came in and ate in the evenings at the table she'd taken to keeping set for me at the back, away from the windows. The small, practical things a woman does when she's decided a man is worth keeping alive. I noticed all of it. On the second of those 3 days, in the afternoon, I was at the table, and she came and sat across from me for a while, the way she'd started doing when the bar was slow. She had the ledger, but she wasn't writing in it. Tell me something, she said. What? What you do after this? I thought about it. Move on, I said. Gar will have something else eventually. Or I'll find work. Always someone else's fight. Usually. She looked at the ledger. Don't you get tired of it? Yes. But you keep doing it. I'm good at it and it matters, I said. That's enough. She looked at me then. Is it? It was not a challenging question. It was a real one. She was asking it, because she actually wanted to know, not to score a point. I thought about it honestly for a moment. It's been enough, I said. For a long time it's been enough. She heard the tense of that. I saw it in her face. She didn't say anything more about it. But she stayed at the table a little longer than she had to, and the ledger stayed closed. The morning the circuit judge arrived. His name was Oakes, and he had the build of a man who had once been bigger, and the manner of a man who had been hearing the worst of people for 20 years, and had arrived at something like a tired patience about it. He set up in the town hall, which in Harlan was a single large room above the mercantile, and posted notice that he'd hear the Holt water rights matter in the afternoon. Gar arrived on the same coach. I'd never met him in person. We'd worked through letters and a mutual acquaintance, and he was a small, precise man in a brown suit who shook my hand with the grip of someone who has spent his life making documents matter. I put everything in his hands at the table in the corner of the town hall. The original deed, rolled, and in its protective case. The certified wire receipt from the Amarillo recorder, Aldis's copy of the forged letter, with a note in Gar's own handwriting which I'd given him on the walk, over describing the circumstances of its production. Gar looked through all of it, organized it, reorganized it. He had the quality of a man who turned every stone twice, and I appreciated that. This is good work, he said. Get her the water right, I said. I intend to. Cruz had representation too, a man from Amarillo who had the look of being very expensive and very certain of himself. He sat across the room from Gar with 2 leather cases and the flat expression of a man who believes in the power of paper. Della sat beside Gar. She wore the closest thing to formal dress I'd seen on her. A dark jacket, her hair pulled back, a quiet severity that suited her. She did not look at Cruz. She looked at the judge with the direct attention of a person who intends to be present for every word. I stood at the back. The hearing itself took 2 hours. I won't lay out all of it because the legal argument is less important than what it meant. Gar presented the original deed, the certified recording, the Amarillo wire. Cruz's man presented his competing claim, referenced the county recorder's correspondence, and Gar put Aldis's letter on the table alongside the wire receipt showing no such correspondence existed. The judge looked at that for a long time. He asked Cruz's man a question. The man answered. The judge asked a follow-up. The answer to that was less clean. Oakes had been hearing cases for 20 years. He recognized a forgery argument when he saw one. He called a brief recess. During that recess, I stood by the door. Cruz was across the room, flanked by his men, and he looked at me with the expression of a man who has arrived at the understanding that he has lost and is deciding whether anger is useful. It generally isn't. He seemed to know that. When the judge came back, he was brief. The original water right was certified, properly recorded, and legitimate. The competing claim relied on correspondence that demonstrably did not exist. The recorder's own office had confirmed this under direct wire inquiry. The competing claim was dismissed. The fraud element would be referred to the county prosecutor. Della Holt retained her water right, her 40 acres, and the creek. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Gar reached across and shook Della's hand. She shook it, looked at the table for a moment, looked up. She looked at me across the room. I nodded. It was evening when I came back to the saloon. The regulars were there, the ranch hands and the merchants, the old men in the corner, and there was a quality to the air that wasn't quite celebration, more like a room that had been holding its breath for a long time and had finally let it out. The sound was louder than usual. Someone was laughing at the bar. Della was behind it. She looked up when I came in and something moved in her face, not quite a smile but in the same territory. I sat at the corner table. She came around from behind the bar about 20 minutes later and sat across from me, and this time she brought the bottle of Kentucky whiskey. She poured 2 glasses, the good kind, the ones with the thin sides that held the smell. It's done, she said. It's done. She looked at her glass. Cruz was at the hotel until an hour ago. Then he left. His men too. They won't be back, I said. Not for this. Without the water right, the whole play collapses. He'll look for another valley. She nodded. We drank for a while without talking. That is one of the good things about being with the right person. The silence doesn't need to be filled. She was thinking about something, and I let her think. After a while she said, what I said the other morning, about fighting dirty. I remember. I meant it as a... She stopped, looked at the glass. I've watched a lot of men in this bar for 11 years. You learn to read them, what they want, what they'll do, what they're afraid of. She paused. You were different. How? Most men who do what you do, the hired gun type, I've seen them come through. They need you to know how dangerous they are. It's part of how they operate. The threat is as important as the action. She looked at me directly. You never needed me to know anything. You just did it. I didn't have an answer to that. That's rare, she said. In my experience. In mine too, I said. She looked at me for a moment. Then she set her glass down and looked at her hands. The hands of a woman who has worked. Good hands. Capable hands. The kind that have held tools and ledgers, and probably a rifle when it came to that. I don't know what you're thinking, she said. About after. I've been thinking about it, I said. And, I don't know yet, I said, which was honest. I'd been thinking about it since the second day at the table, and I'd been thinking about it harder since she'd sat across from me in the afternoon and asked if it was enough. What are you thinking about it? She was quiet for a moment. I've been alone a long time, she said. By choice, mostly. There have been men who wanted to involve themselves. Men who thought a woman running a saloon was a certain kind of woman, or men who thought she needed help she didn't need, or men who thought if they were useful enough she'd be grateful enough. She said this plainly, without bitterness, just the account of a thing. None of them were worth the trouble. And you didn't do any of those things. She looked at the glass. You did the work. You were straight with me. You didn't try to make me feel like I owed you something. You didn't owe me anything, I said. Gar paid me. She looked up. That's exactly what I mean, she said. I held her look. I have a spare room, she said. Not the one you've been renting. There's one at the back, on the ground floor. I use it for storage, but it's a good room. Good windows. My husband used it as an office. I let that settle. You'd want help with the land, I said. With the men who left. I'd want help with the land, she said. And other things. Other things. I'm alone running 40 acres and a saloon, she said. I've been doing it and I can keep doing it. But I'm 52 years old, and I'm tired in the way that isn't fixed by sleep. She met my eyes. I don't need someone to save me. I needed someone to hold the line long enough for the law to work, and you did that. That's done. What I'm talking about now is different. I sat with that for a moment. I've been on the move for 22 years, I said. I know. I don't know how I'd take to staying. I don't know either, she said. But I think you could learn it. She paused. I think you'd be good at it. No one had said that to me before. Not in that way, with that particular certainty. Not a woman who didn't need anything from me, who had been alone by choice, and was making a different choice now with both eyes open. She wasn't asking me to be anything other than what I was. She was saying she'd looked at what I was and found it sufficient. More than sufficient. I looked at her. She was still, the way she was still when she was certain. The lamplight in the saloon was the warm kind, the kind that makes everything look like it's the right distance from everything else. And she looked like a woman who had built something real in a difficult place, and was still there, still standing, still running her numbers in a ledger, and pouring honest drinks, and not asking to be rescued. Just asking, in her particular way, whether I wanted to be here. The room at the back, I said. Yes. With good windows. South-facing, she said. Good light in the morning. I picked up my glass. Drank the last of the Kentucky whiskey. I'll want to look at the land, I said. The 40 acres. I'll want to know what it needs. I'll show you tomorrow, she said. I set the glass down. She didn't reach across the table. She didn't have to. She just looked at me with that direct look. The one that had been measuring me since the first morning when she put the pen down and decided whether I was being straight with her. And there was something in it now that had come uncovered, warm and level, and entirely decided. I looked back at her. Outside, Harlan was going quiet in the way a town goes quiet when the thing that's been pressing on it lifts. You could feel it even from inside, a loosening. Something that had been clenched for months, slowly letting go. She reached over and poured us both one more inch from her father's bottle. To the judge, she said. To the judge, I said. We drank. After a while, the last of the regulars drifted out, and she put the chairs up on the tables the way she did every night, moving around the room with the quiet efficiency of a woman in her own place. And I helped her with the far side without being asked. And when we were done, she blew out the lamp above the bar, and we stood there in the dark for a moment, with the light coming through the front windows from the street, faint and silver. She touched my arm. Not a grip, just the flat of her hand above my elbow. Brief and certain. Then she said goodnight and went upstairs. I went to bed. Through the window above my bunk, I could see one star, very bright, and below it, the dark outline of the ridge to the west. And beyond that, the 40 acres I hadn't seen yet but was going to look at in the morning, with good light. The kind that tells you what a thing actually is. I lay there, and I thought about 22 years of riding, and I thought about a woman's hand on my arm, and what the word sufficient means, when a person who doesn't need anything from you uses it anyway, freely, meaning it. I thought about good windows. I slept.